Welcome to the fourth episode of Life, the Universe, and Being a Veterinarian. I'm Dr. Tanya Grantham, and I'm so pleased that you've joined me today. I want to explore a little bit more the concept of self-love. What does it mean? How does it present in our lives? And how can we exercise and institute in our lives, or bring into our lives, more love for ourselves? I want to start where I left on the last recording, which was a wheel of self-care. And I want to spend a little bit more time focusing on a few sections of that wheel. When I was first introduced to the concept of self-love, which, you'd think that we would all know what it is to love ourselves. But I do believe that in our world today, most of us don't love ourselves, and that we have a lot of conversations in our heads, and a lot of self-loathing and a lot of recriminations about who we are, what we do, and how we behave. And so I don't think that self-love is evident. And in many instances, as it was for me, self-love was not natural. When I first started exploring the concept of self-love, I thought that literally self-love was self-care. And that I've always done relatively well. I've always looked after myself and my body. I've always eaten regular meals. And don't think that self-care is not part of self-love. It is, but it's so much more than that. Eating regular meals is very important, and eating nutritious meals is really important for self-care and to give you the correct balance of energy that is required for you to happily and easily, or for you to move through your day with ease. And this I have only learned later in my life. So I'm not here to preach to you what nutrition is good for you. When I look at my vegan friends are really healthy. I have a client now who's following the carnivore diet, and she says she's never felt better. I have friends that follow a Mediterranean diet. My diet, I have now taken a little bit from all of the areas that I've read about, all of the areas with which I've experimented, and I've incorporated it into a regular eating program with snacks that suits me. And what it does is it maintains my energy levels. It maintains my sugar levels so that I don't have mood swings. Or if I do, my mood swings are not as enormous as they were when I was not focusing on what I actually put into my body. If we come back to the concept of self-care, then to regulate your moods is really important for you to feel good and to feel good about yourself. What other aspects of self-care, apart from nutrition and making sure that your energy levels are as they should be for you to cope with your day, what other aspects are important? I mean, we know that sleep definitely influences our mood. So, are you having regular sleep? Do you have good sleep hygiene? What does that mean? It means that you go to bed at a particular time, and that you don't look at your screens, your computer screen or your cell phone or your iPad before bed, because that light influences areas of your brain and wakes them up as opposed to putting them to sleep. Do you have a particular routine? Do you have a bath or a shower? Is there a something that you do prior to going to bed that facilitates sleep and that tells your brain and your body, now we're going to sleep? And then, do you get enough hours of sleep? The other aspect of self-care that plays a role is exercise. I believe, same as with the diet, that everybody needs to figure out what sort of movement and exercise works for them. But it is important that we move. Our bodies, once I've gone into this realm of veterinary physiotherapy, and I started reading all that I could read about physio, our human body, or the human body, is designed to move. Bring us to the modern times, and we sit in a chair for 8 to 10 hours, sometimes even longer a day. And that is not good for our body. It's not good for our homeostasis, or the balance within our body. So my question to you is, what are you exercising regularly? And you could argue with me, once a year is also regular. Sure. But more frequently than once a year, we should have some sort of exercise or movement routine that fits into your daily or weekly schedule. So now that I am doing a lot more behind the computer work, I have actually started setting a timer on my phone. So I do a 50-minute timer, and then my alarm goes off, and then I get up, and for 10 minutes I move around. And one of the best things that I've started doing moving around is to put on a track that I really like and to dance with my dog. So the track is anything between 3 and 7 minutes, or 6 minutes, isn't it? And that movement, it gives me bonding time and pleasure because I'm with my dog. And it also gives my body movement and gets all of the joints moving, the lubricated, the muscles activated, and my brain gets a chance to relax. Since I've introduced that into my daily schedule, into my work mornings, it's been quite an incredible transformation for me. And I'm not as stiff as I used to be, especially in the neck and shoulders, after you sit like this all the time. So the other thing that I think is important for self-care is your relationships and your socializing. When I worked in small animal practice, I was working very long days, as many of us do. I was there for nearly 14 hours a day. And I was working, depends, 5 days a week or 7 days a week. So I'd work 12 days on, during which I did all the after-hours calls. And when you're working in busy small animal practice, there is a lot of conversation. And even as a veterinary rehabilitation practitioner, you have a lot of conversations with people, and people are moving into your space all the time. What that does is, what it did for me was, I would come home and I wouldn't want to talk. So I had to be very careful and very aware of that tendency of mine to not talk to my partner. And I've had to work very hard on creating time where we can actually reconnect. So connection is important, but connection which puts pressure on you is not good for you. So, for example, you get invited to your mother-in-law's, it's always the mother-in-law, you get invited to your mother-in-law's Sunday lunch, and it's your weekend off, and you really don't feel like going to visit your mother-in-law. But you say yes because of family pressures, and because, what will the family say if your husband goes on his own, or your partner goes on her own? And I've learned now, and it comes back down to boundaries. If I can politely refuse something which I'm doing out of duty, then I'm a better person for having not gone there. And the next time I interact with the family, or the next time I interact with anyone, I'm in a better space because I didn't place myself into a situation where I felt uncomfortable, where I felt obliged to go. And that, for my own internal environment, does way more for me than doing something out of a sense of duty. Boundaries lead me to discuss self-talk. So what do you tell yourself? And self-talk leads us to self-acceptance. So when I was younger, and even now still, but I'm a lot better, I had a very, very harsh inner critic. I would speak to myself so badly. I mean, the terminology and the tone and the way I used to chastise myself, I would not talk to a person that way. And I would certainly not talk to a friend of mine that way. So the question is, why did I talk to myself that way? And a lot of that critique and that conversation within myself, I have discovered, comes from a lack of respect for myself and a sense of very little self-worth. So I didn't believe that I deserved the things that would come my way, or that I was deserving of love or deserving of a good life. Have a look at how do you speak to yourself? What are the conversations that you have with yourself? How do you chastise yourself? Because my inner voice and my inner critic has been a source of much unhappiness for me. What I did realize with time, and I'm getting better at catching myself when I speak badly to myself, but it's my ego that doesn't want to feel ashamed. It's my ego that doesn't want to feel bad. So my ego, in actual fact, is calling the shots. And my ego, in truth, doesn't have my health and my own situation at its core. The ego just doesn't want to be seen to be less than. But if I come into my heart space and I really genuinely look at what do I need, then I'm in a better position to make a decision that serves me, and that will serve me in the long run. Because, as I've said, it's not possible to serve and to treat and to be in a healing profession without being able to look after yourself and to replenish all of those energies and all of that love and all of that care that you are constantly putting out into the world. Let's touch a little bit on, the negative self-talk. For a long time, I was not even aware that I spoke to myself in that way. And as I embarked on this journey of what I would call wellness, I want to be balanced, and I want to be at peace and live a life of ease, and I want to be happy. And I'm responsible for all of those things for me, not responsible for them for anybody else. I started to ask the questions, why do I speak to myself that way? And it's a journey that I'm still very much on. And I learn something every single day. The more I look into the hurts, the conflicts, the traumas, the upsets, the unhappy childhoods, and all of those labels that we carry with us, and all of those incidents and things that have happened to us, I'm not undermining them at all. The more I realize that the more I understand who's the person behind the mask and who's the person behind all the layers. And I have learned to become a friend to myself and to become a friend to my younger self. In my younger years, I was actually very lonely and ostracized, and I had a really tough time. And I took all of that on internally. So I blamed myself for being pushed out of a group. I blamed myself for not being accepted by my peers. And really, as I've grown older and I've started investigating, it's not actually that way. It has been fascinating to have a look at the layers and at the self-critic, because she comes out when I feel inadequate. And how many of you feel inadequate? I've taken a little bit of a side track. I was talking about self-love and self-worth. And the more I have uncovered my motivations for the way I speak to myself and the way that I behave, the more I have started to befriend myself, and the more I can move into self-compassion. So I have mentioned, we spend our days being compassionate and empathetic to the clients and the patients that come our way. And we allow ourselves very little leeway in terms of compassion. But as I spend more time understanding myself, I allow myself from within. I'm way more compassionate. And that is a healing balm. And it also brings me a lot more peace and a lot more ease and a lot more comfort and acceptance of who I am and my journey and where I am right now. One of the other aspects of self-love that I want to briefly touch on is my mental health. The question could be, how does self-talk differ from mental health? And I think it differs a great deal. My mental health is, how do I develop resilience? How do I bounce back from the difficulties that I might find myself in? Aside from the exercises and the nutrition and looking into the self-talk and self-discovery and self-acceptance, what else do I have in my life, or where else do I participate? What else do I do that allows me to come out of my cycles, and particularly my work cycles? So it can be very easy to stay in the work situation and in the work mode. What are you participating in that removes you from that situation? So it could be exercise, it could be socializing, but we're looking at things like hobbies. What do you do that removes you from your workspace completely? Something like, do you play a musical instrument? Do you create art? Do you meet with friends and, run a trail run? Again, it's exercise, but it gets you out and it gets you into a situation where you are not thinking and worrying and completely immersed in your professional life. To be honest, this is an area where I have seriously been negligent, particularly in the last few years. I've immersed myself into my business and into my work, and it has resulted in a very serious amount of fatigue. As I prepare these videos and as I start to look at where I have imbalances in my life, it's really interesting. And so the challenge for me now is, where am I going to introduce some sort of hobby or release that does not have anything to do with my job? So in line with that, it's about self-care, self-knowledge. What is it that makes me feel good? What do I do that allows me to release tension? How do I relieve myself of the pressures that I find myself in every single day? That's part of self-love. Do I love myself enough to create that space and that time to release and to move into ease? So in closing, we've looked at self-love under a number of different categories: self-care, mental health, self-discovery. We've even looked at, where's my resilience? Where are my boundaries? What does my inner voice say? What's my self-talk? And all of these things sort of mingle together and come together. And hopefully you will be looking at more self-acceptance and more self-compassion and more ability to appreciate and value who you are. Are you living in alignment also with your values? Because if you aren't, that creates even more stress and will perpetuate certain cycles. Do you do things? Do you align and spend time with people that support you and support your health? And ultimately, we need to find the validation from within and not be looking for it from external sources and from different people, but from within ourselves. I need to learn to love myself and accept myself. And I think that's part of our journey. Once again, thank you for choosing to spend this time with me. So much love to you.